In 6 months, we achieved systemic change that will improve the way young people experience growing up for generations to come. Talk us through the early days of the campaign. Those initial conversations were with whom and about what?
Well, for one, it was trying to decide.
This one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Prime Minister, can we celebrate what is a world-leading change that you've done here in Australia?
Full credit to you guys, because without it, I don't think the momentum would have been there for the PM to act.
36 Months is a movement for healthy teen development without the influence of social media, focused on the 36 months between 13 and 16. We were the catalyst behind the new social media legislation in Australia. We rallied more than 127,000 signatures to raise the age of social media citizenship by 36 months from 13 to 16. This podcast is for parents, teachers, coaches, the custodians of healthy teen development who still believe that an intentional 36 months could change a lifetime. My name is Greg Attwells, Director of 36 Months, and your host for this episode.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Michael John Wipfli from the Wipfli family.
Yeah.
I stole your introduction.
No, normally I like to say myself, but this feels very intimate, Greg, doesn't it?
It's nice. It's nice to be able to sit down. You can touch my knee. Okay. That's fine.
Can I grab, I'll get a whiskey, like just a single malt on the rocks, please.
What is your...
I'll just share as we pull any book off the shelf here to reference our knowledge.
Yep.
We should have a glass thereof, Greg.
Yeah, it would be nice, actually. I've sort of cut away drinking for the large part.
Me too.
But I do like a whiskey every now and then.
For the sake of the set.
Okay.
I'm clean as a whistle. You still smoking?
No, never. I've never had a cigarette, not even a puff in my life. No.
Neither.
There's hope for the kids just yet.
For the kids, yeah.
Michael John Wipfli from the Wipfli family, otherwise known as Wippa, co-host of Fitzy Wippa and Kate Ritchie breakfast show on Nova 969 Sydney, and in all of your spare time, co-founder of 36 Months. Before we get into things, what's one thing about you that is uncommon or that you've always wanted to tell people that no one ever asked you about in an interview?
Gee, that's a big, big question. I think, and this ties into 36 Months.
Okay.
If you were to talk about what I really am interested in, a big part of it is obsession with people.
Okay.
Like, I truly love people.
Wow.
I hate a lot of them as well. There's some turds out there, Greg. But the way people move, react, interact, what drives them, what builds communities, the dance that we're having now, the back and forth, the flirt, Greg, you might say. I find people fascinating.
You are very perceptive.
Yeah, I think I can be at times. I mean, I think it's a learnt skill to be able to read a room as well and pick up on it. But I think at the same time, I'm sensitive. So I'm sensitive to someone that might feel out of place or something's doesn't fit properly in a social setting. I think I do pick up on things like that, or habits as well. I think that's another fascinating thing though, because also I think as part of what I do in radio, it's great storytelling. And I love the art of a well-told story. I think, that's magic. We had Russell Crowe in the other day.
Yeah, was that fun?
He was there for an hour.
Wow.
And he just told stories. But when he tells a story, it's almost like a storybook, or you're in the movie with him. He's such a great storyteller. And his word economy and his choice of words, it's an unbelievable skill.
You've got a bit of a thing for word economy, don't you?
Mm. What do you mean? Do I say too much? Or
No. You always challenge me to use less words.
Well, no, your thinking time is too long.
Okay.
That's the problem. More time talking, Greg. Back yourself. But I hate it when I ask you a question. Tahini, you know about this. And Greg will go, oh. And it's like you're watching a movie and the Wi-Fi's dropped out. And you think, Greg, are you still with us, Greg? The Wi-Fi kicks back in. and then Greg comes out with something. But it's worth the wait quite often,
Oh,
Greg.
that's good to know.
Your messaging and your words are often quite wise.
Okay.
So sometimes I'm all right with the internet dropping out
The
on you.
Wi-Fi has dropped out. That's funny. Before we get into how this kind of campaign unfolded, I think it'd be quite nice to sort of lift the veil on some things. I'd love to start with why. Like, why 36 months? Why now?
36 months. I mean, if we talk about why the timing was so good right now, that's one thing. Because if you look at the result, I think that was a combination of three things. It is the timing, the topic, and the pressure. I think that's what got the result. But why for me personally, I just have this image of my kids being at home, that they're on their own, in their own world, should I say, and they're sitting there looking at a screen and they're a world away that I can't enter. And I don't know the impact of what it's doing. I know that their thoughts can be lost in the moment of the impact of whatever's being fed to them through some smart algorithm. And that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking of that and having that visual, and it physically moved me. Like, I remember my stomach sinking and thinking, oh my God. And then when things were happening in the US, state by state, because they have different laws over there, the idea of just that 0.1% chance that just maybe we could have an impact and change things was enough to go, well, why shouldn't we try? Like, the possibility and the excitement of thinking, like, you let your mind run at that hypothetical.
Yeah.
And then having a moment also going, well, who are you? Because you turn up and quite often you play the village idiot on the radio, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to put your big boy pants on and, you know, realise that you're a father and you're 45 years old, and it doesn't need to be about prank calls the whole time.
How did you overcome that? Who are you? That sort of imposter syndrome?
I think it was just the importance of the topic.
Okay.
I mean, if you think about, and it's the relief that it could bring. I mean, your mind runs to thinking about a child lying in bed who is possibly bullied during the day. They're being fed all sorts of things at night, whether it's through an algorithm or whether it's, you know, anonymous bullying that they might be receiving as they lie in bed, and the feeling they could go to bed feeling lost. And it's a very traumatic time at night time for a young person as well. Just the way I think your sleeping patterns shift, and as you go through the day, and the tired brain at night invites sensitivity. To think that someone could lie there scared, feeling judged, feeling ranked socially, it's just a horrible, horrible place to be. And that physically scares me for a lot of kids, and obviously especially my own. So that was a huge driver to think, imagine if we could relieve a bit of that. If we could just take a step back, take the pressure off that situation so they could at least lie in bed. I think one thing that I always wanted, and I remember as a kid, I would go to bed, it was a safe spot, and I felt loved. And I'm just so committed to making sure that my kids go to bed at night and they feel safe and they feel loved.
Yeah.
Two things that every kid should deserve when they get into bed. You know, that's not a big ask, I wouldn't think. And social media has been taking that away from our kids.
What I loved about your response is I was curious about why and why now, but you added a third dimension to the why, and that was why me. And I think that's just an interesting thing to reflect on, you know, because I think that imposter syndrome stops a lot of people maybe from taking a swing at the fence or feeling like that they have the right to sort of enter into a space that they may not feel like they're an expert in, but that's exactly what you did.
Well, Rob and I were talking about that a lot, and it became also a bit of, well, if not us, as you would know, who else? You know, we have the team of 36 months, we have Finch, we have access to media, we have the right people in powerful positions to have conversations with. I mean, all the working parts are there to have an impact. And, that adds to the part of the puzzle, which was pressure.
Yeah.
And knowing that the topic was just so sensitive and we saw it so clearly, we pulled the trigger on the petition. It's 10,000 people a day.
Yeah.
We knew we'd hit interest.
Yeah.
And we backed that from the word go, knowing what the conversations on the sidelines at sport was,
So on May 19, we launched the campaign on the project. You were on the project. That was sort of
quietly shitting myself.
Yeah, ground zero, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then on November 7, the PM announced changes to the law, and they reflected what we were asking for, which was an exciting moment. And then on November 28, the Senate passed the bill. So in 6 months, we achieved systemic change that will improve the way young people experience growing up for generations to come. Talk us through the early days of the campaign. Those initial conversations were with whom and about what?
Well, for one, it was trying to decide what's possible. And we discussed this a lot. What could we achieve, I think, on a technical front? And very quickly, we wound that conversation up because we can't technically do anything on these platforms. I can't get into the system at Snapchat and make any changes. So it was going to be easier to make more of a cultural change than obviously a tech change. These companies have the best players in the world. They've got the smartest brains in the smartest space. So let them do their thing. But when we come back to the core of what we're talking about, it was simply the relief for parents and the kids. So that's something we could do. I think knowing that we could gather the parents at a grassroots level was the main thing to focus on.
Yeah.
And we knew that we could build the power in that. We knew that we could get and speak to some experts. And we kind of knew, we knew the task, but we had to build those blocks to get there. So it was going, okay, we need sort of validation for what we're doing as well. So we have the experts like the Maggie Dent, who's been on this podcast as well. And we had all the data. And the other thing we realized was when it comes to the timing and why it's so good now is because we have 10 years of social media. We have the data set to say here is where the mindset and the healthy teen has gone downhill and the introduction of social media. So all of that existed as well. But really, when it came to playing to our strengths, like if you talk about the path of least resistance, we just had to get to the main people on the topic at the right time. So we had to find, I mean, you always shoot for the top. We had to sit down with the Prime Minister, didn't we?
Yeah.
We had to go, okay, here's what we're going to do.
But I remember some of those really early conversations with Dom Perrottet, former New South Wales Premier, and he really, I think, helped us in the early days understand the political landscape and even just seeded the idea that this might be a change that we could achieve this year, just with the election coming up.
I mean, it was a brief conversation. We sat down with Dom. Within 30 seconds, he said, you don't need to sell it to me, I get it. And Dom's got 23 kids.
Yes.
So, I get it. I got a 15-year-old who's in the granny flat a world away and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, great. And then it was like talking to a builder. Can we do it? Yeah, mate, we just put the ceiling in and we paint it. That's what it was like. Tom goes, oh yeah, you could do it. You do it before the end of the year.
We didn't believe
you. Do you know what was funny though? I was like, oh yeah, sure, okay. Politics. I know a lot about it. I've read some rumours about politicians. But what I also loved was Rob's approach, where he said, hey, I'm not going to pick a fight unless I know I can win it.
Yeah.
So Rob knew where we stood as well.
Yeah, Rob was great. He kept us, he used this idea or phrase of like staying in our power a lot. And I think for us, that was staying very focused on our objective, which was raising the age of social media citizenship from 13 to 16. And then we had lots of meetings in the early days of people that wanted us to adopt maybe
You're taking me back there.
Adjacent sort of issues that were affecting the healthy development of young people that are all really important, you know, bullying more broadly, vaping, gaming,
All big topics.
all kind of things, right? I think if we tried to do everything,
Yeah.
we would have hit nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. You're right. Back in those early conversations, because we had to work out what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Because then we were going, well, what is a social media platform?
Yeah, and we were like, what apps are we?
Yeah.
Do we think should be included? What apps shouldn't? We did all of that work early on.
And that was hard to determine because one leads to another. Because you're right. When you go to social media, you go to screen time, you go to smartphones, you end up at YouTube, and then you leak into computer games. You're on Fortnite, your Xbox, your Minecraft,
Yeah.
like
And it
Roblox.
feels like everything,
And then
right?
you go, oh, God, we're done. I
Yeah.
don't get it. This thing is a mess.
Yeah.
This is far too blended. So you're right. That clarity of raising the age from 13 to 16 on social media platforms was probably our strongest weapon.
And we had that fed back to us by David Coleman, who said that because you gave us a really clear, specific and measurable ask,
Yeah.
it allowed them to debate it as politicians
Yeah.
easily, and there was a legislative framework that already existed around it. You know, I
Yeah.
think it's a good lesson in just being very clear about what you're
Because you're right. There was quite a few groups that said, "Hey, we'd love to do something with you. We're anti-smartphone," and we went, "Oh, but we're not anti-smartphone."
Yeah.
And it was hard because you want to support those groups as well. But the minute we cross the line,
It becomes very
You
a
open it
bigger
up.
conversation
Yeah.
and messier and more complicated, and sometimes complexity is the
Yeah.
enemy of execution, right?
Roblox was one.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't apply under what we were specific about.
Yeah.
So that's another topic, which is just as important and another fight for another day.
Yeah.
And there's people working on that. But you open Roblox, you're into Fortnite, you're into Xbox, PlayStation,
Minecraft.
Nintendo Switch. Where do you stop?
Yeah.
You snitch.
Yeah, totally. Did you have any early fears?
Oh, I had many. Do you know what? Early on, it was probably the momentum and the launch and all the interviews we were doing, which I was nervous about too. Once again, the big boy pants. There were moments where it was, are we wasting our time? Like, who am I, or who are we, to suggest we know anything about how politics work? Rob's still confused between Labor and Liberal, but that's okay. That's a workshop for another day. But it was thinking, hang on a minute, are people just playing along with us? Are the politicians just saying, oh, yeah, oh, that's important. Thank you, mate. I want to commend you on all the fantastic work that you've done. Next meeting, I want to commend you on all the fantastic. You don't know the impact you're having.
Yeah.
But I think when we were in the meeting, also, back at the start, I was like, should we have a petition? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We're almost anti-petition because it felt too simple.
Yeah. And that
We almost wanted to out-clever ourselves.
Remember, we were talking about, we'll have a thing on our website where you can send a letter to your local member. And I think in hindsight, that would have been too complicated. It's too hard. I think part of what made this successful was that we gave parents an easy call to action, which was just sign a petition.
Well,
and
that's
then
the
that
thing.
became evidence when we spoke with our elected officials. That was evidence of public sentiment around this issue. And that was
The petition became so much.
Yeah.
Because, for one, it became the largest petition globally on the topic.
Yeah.
So that gave us the voice of Australia. So you had that, and that equals pressure. Do you know what I loved also as it went on and the numbers grew? Because at times it was confronting, not a case of good cop, bad cop, but simply the leverage of the petition.
Yeah.
Where we were able to say, hey, I know this is confronting, but I'm here representing 130,000 people.
Yeah.
And I feel the pressure to get this done.
Yeah. Wow.
So I want you to visually picture 130,000 people behind me. I've got to get back to them. What do you want me to tell everyone?
Yeah.
And you know, it was funny we'll probably jump to this, but the trip down to Canberra, a lot of the conversation about meeting with the Prime Minister.
Yeah. We had some
was,
good lines ready to go, didn't we?
3.5 hours of them. But it was, a lot of the conversation was, am I going to have to say to the Prime Minister, do you want me to tell the 130,000
Yeah.
behind me?
We had a great line ready to go. I was like, there's a good chance you might not be around in a few months' time. If you don't do this, what have you done? I was waiting to say that. Never got the chance.
It was really interesting because strategically, and I've said this kind of all along too, since we presented the petition in Parliament here, in State Parliament in New South Wales, is that quite often it felt like you're in a really long episode of Thank God You're Here, where you push through the door and you don't know what's on the other side. Do you remember? You're standing there in Parliament and it's somber because the topic can be heavy, and we're dealing with
Parents are there,
parents that have lost children.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, Wippa, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? Thanks everyone for coming along. Today is really important. Those moments were hard.
Yeah.
Where you go, a lot of what do we do next?
Yeah.
And trying to feed and read the play once again.
Yeah, I was really impressed over the last 6 months by the behaviour of our politicians. I was waiting for some sort of shadiness or sleight of hand. I was waiting for them to say one thing and do another. I was quite cynical, maybe just based on, TV shows I'd watched or watching sort of politics play out in other countries or whatever. But I reckon at a state level and at a federal level, everyone sort of did what they said they'd do.
Yeah, they did.
And they kept the issue above the partisan fray. And they kept it about parents and their kids.
I was actually quite amazed.
And they were decent.
Well, if we go back to the start, for one, we had Chris Minns come into the studio.
Yeah.
New South Wales Premier. And he said, this is so important.
Yeah.
So he was very firm on it, which was fantastic. I think following that, Peter Dutton came in.
He was the first to make a bold call.
He was. And behind the scenes, his man, David Coleman, Shadow Communications Minister, he's been working in the mental health space for such a long time.
Yeah.
He is a master.
Yeah.
David Coleman is so good at what he does.
Yeah. He was also very generous with his time to us.
Yep.
We people might not know, but we spent a lot of time on video calls and phone calls with him.
He's an exceptional guy.
Yeah.
The other thing, because in my mind, I was like, this topic's so big. If there was an election and I knew my kids were going to be kept safe and I always voted one way, I'd vote the other way on this topic.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it was a great election campaign if either party required it.
Yeah, there's a platform there to run on, really.
In a big way.
Yeah.
And there was a team also at 36 months saying, hey, if you back it, we'll back you.
Yeah.
And then Peter Dutton comes in and he says, if my party gets into power, then I put it at the top of my list for the first 100 days.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, this is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I also remember thinking, he's seen the value in this for the Liberal Party heading into an election probably next year. Outside, we start talking off air. And I said, thank you, mate. That was fantastic. That's a huge, huge leap forward. And he said, yeah, but make sure you make this bipartisan. Make sure you chase down Albo.
Yeah.
He's got to be across this.
Yeah.
This is not about me. It's not about him. It's not about us. This is for the kids and needs to get done.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, okay, that's really decent.
Yeah.
Because you hear the stories of politicians, win at all cost, slag, scam, scum, all of that. So that was one example where I thought, oh, that's extremely decent.
Yeah.
Jump to the loss of beautiful Charlotte O'Brien, right, which was crushing. She's 12 years old and the relentless bullying resulted in her taking her own life. Kelly and Matt, her parents, obviously in the darkest of times, saw the calling. They were supporters of 36 Months. And I had interviewed Matt on air for a special podcast. Not long after that, I got an email from Kelly, Charlotte's mum, with a letter that she'd written to the Prime Minister, which was just so jarring.
Yeah, it was.
Nothing a parent should ever have to go through. So I passed the letter on to...
And it was jarring because she sort of unpacked what had happened to her daughter.
Went through in detail what had happened. But the greatest impact was the fact that she skipped off to bed that night. She was happy.
Yeah.
She got into bed and jumped on her phone. The next morning, she was no longer with us.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with the Prime Minister and said, the letter's coming to you, important to read. 2 days later, I get a phone call from Albo's right-hand man saying, could you please pass on Kelly's phone number? The Prime Minister would like to give her a call. And I thought, wow.
It's really decent.
Yeah, it's a really decent thing to do because he would get 100,000 letters a day.
Yeah.
And it would be hard to prioritise and work out where your attention needs to be in that role. So I thought that was just so decent.
Yeah.
Prior to that, he'd come on the show and he'd made an announcement that he was going to change the laws around this topic in November. And everybody went, yes, another step forward. But we don't know what those laws are going to be.
Yeah, what the age was going to be.
Was it going to drop it to 8?
Commit.
But we didn't know. We didn't know what his commitment looked like at that stage. So cut to the law being changed, or our visit to Canberra. For one, he rang me the night before, which was exceptional because he wanted to let me know that he was going to make the announcement.
Left a voicemail. You didn't
Well, I
answer
was
your
out
phone.
for Japanese or something kind of sake
We
bombs.
didn't hear it till the next day, so we had no idea.
We
what
had
was
no
happening.
idea. So great to miss a call from the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Great Japanese on camera.
Okay.
And then we walk into Parliament House. He walks up and he goes, did you get my voicemail? What? He goes, oh, I rang you, mate. I rang you. Let you know about the house. Well, it's good news. Anyway, in that moment, he was fantastic with the parents that were there as well. Rob, who had lost her little girl, Liv, she was there in spirit. And I thought the way he handled the sensitivity of the sadness and the grievance that those families was experiencing was very, very good. Following that, a written letter from the Prime Minister saying thank you for your contribution to such an important issue, I thought was also a surprisingly decent and considerate thing to do.
Yeah.
So I'm similar to you. My takeaway from politics in Australia is there's a great level of decency there in an attempt to do the right thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't just from Dutton and Albo. Like I remember David Coleman encouraging us
Kelly Sloan.
to keep this above partisan politics. Kelly Sloan was the same.
My God, we've got to get this in front of state politics right now.
Yeah, and there's bipartisan support. She worked with both sides of government for that public interest debate in New South Wales. People really showed up for the issue, not necessarily for their party.
Yeah, they turned up as parents,
Yeah,
didn't they?
Yeah. It was really, I think it's important to, sometimes the media paints our politicians in a negative light.
You're right. I thought we were going to be caught out by trickery, or there was a secret language we wouldn't understand.
I was proud.
Or that one message meant something else. You're right. I was the same as you.
Yeah.
I was really proud of the way the system ran.
Yeah.
And how professional. I don't know why I expected more, a different story, but you're right. Maybe it's just what you do hear from the media.
Yeah. Well, it's
Snakes in the grass.
Yeah. And maybe it's a good segue into my next question is, at the start, like honestly, did you think that this would happen? That we'd get the change?
That's a hard question to ask because I'm a big believer in the impossible. Yeah. But I took a lot of comfort in going, Dom Perrottet knows more about this than me.
Yeah, there were some early believers, weren't they, that gave us kind of confidence.
Yeah.
It's important to recognise them because they played a significant role early
And you
on.
needed that confidence.
Fanning the flame.
Like when I spoke to Dad's 76. And as he gets older, he gets a bit more emotional. But he was in tears. He goes, I can't believe the impact you've had in helping make this change.
Yeah.
And he said, when you first told me about it, I kind of thought, oh, yeah, here's another idea. Here he is, the bloody silly kid with another creative, wacky idea. A little bit of what are you going to do next? And then I had many moments where I thought, is this just the kid with another wacky idea?
Yeah.
What about you, Greg? Did you think we'd do it?
I think I did.
Good.
But I am a 10 out of 10 optimist.
So am I. So yes, my answer is yes.
Yeah.
But also, because Ted is 9, my eldest Ted, I thought at the age of 13, I'm going to give this 4 years.
Yeah.
So that was my commitment.
Yeah.
A 4-year runway to just continue to push, apply pressure, and drive it home.
Yeah. What surprised me was how swiftly it happened.
Oh, and do you know what? I went to a drinks the other night.
Yeah.
Peter Dutton was there.
Oh, yeah.
So we were chatting and David Coleman was there as well. The takeaway from the conversation with Peter Dutton was saying, if this had gone into next year, I don't think it would have happened.
Really?
Because the water was very quickly becoming so muddy. Because there were so many experts saying this, experts.
Yeah.
There's so many and so much pressure from Meta.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have time, you have more tricks.
Yeah.
So this had to be pinpoint accuracy. It's like a sniper shot.
Yeah. Wow. So the longer it took, the less likely it would have happened.
100%.
That's interesting.
So yeah,
good
he
lesson.
even said if we'd waited after Christmas, you'd have the smart tech working out what else they could possibly do to change the direction of where this is going, because I think they also see the knock-on globally too. So yeah, I found that surprising. So once again, we come back to timing.
Yeah. As you look back on the last 6 months, what do you think was the most pivotal moment in the campaign?
Besides the obvious of the outcome, and I think the presence we had in Canberra.
Oh, the trip to Canberra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'd spoken about that too. We'd kind of false started a couple of times. We had to work out when Parliament was going to be sitting.
I wonder if the announcement would have been made if we didn't decide to go down.
I don't think so.
I think that was quite pivotal.
I say that because I don't know who this was.
Because, I mean, our meeting with the Prime Minister was scheduled for 9:30.
Yeah.
And on the morning, we were down there and they moved it back to 10 and they scheduled a press conference for 9:30 to announce changes to the legislation to essentially jump the gun. And so all of our great rhetoric that we planned for the meeting, we had to not really use because it was the tone of the meeting was very different. It was more of a thank you.
But there was also someone that pulled me aside and said, the pressure of you guys coming to Canberra has done this.
Wow.
I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he has to take the meeting with you guys, right? Because he knows you're in the media and he can't have you walk out. He can't have you turn up in Canberra, you guys, with 130,000 people behind you.
And some families.
Yeah, and the
lost
families.
kids. Yeah.
And say the Prime Minister didn't have time to take the meeting.
Yeah.
So he can't do that. He's got Peter Dutton,
who's going to take the meeting.
who's going to take the meeting and has made his stance very clear. And he said, when he heard you guys were coming to Canberra, he couldn't afford to look weak on this issue.
Yeah.
So the press conference for the 9:30 that he called was him realising, but he also would have done it with Michelle Rowland and the understanding. They were across the topic.
Very much so. Again, that surprised me. Like what they were
the
very
work had
genuine.
gone into the topic.
They were very genuine in their point of view and their clarity on the issue. Yeah, definitely. Yep, I agree.
So the work had been done behind the scenes and they knew that they had to look strong on this topic. They also just knew the importance of it.
Yeah.
So for them to go, let's call it, was the right thing to do. I mean, it got a little bit weird when we were in the meeting in the Prime Minister's office where other presidents meet and the right-hand man walked in and said, I'm sorry to interrupt, President Trump is on the phone.
Oh.
That was another surreal moment.
Interrupted by President Trump.
Yeah, and I said, are you going to ditch me for the Don? And he went, it was a scheduled call. Come on, mate, it's a big day. So that was quite a ridiculous moment to be in.
I smile when I reflect on how many times Destiny's Child entered the mix because we had Kelly Sloan and Michelle Rowland. And we confused the names a lot. A particular person, we won't say who, and Kelly Rowland.
Yeah, Kelly Rowland.
Unfortunately, sorry to Kelly Sloan and Michelle Rowland.
But Kelly Rowland does a great version of Destiny's Child.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you're ready for this, Charlie. I don't think I'm ready. Nails it every time.
What did you find the most challenging aspect of the campaign?
Can I go back to something about a pivotal point?
Oh, yep, sorry.
Because I meant to get back to this.
Okay.
When we went to visit the schools.
Oh, that day.
Yeah.
Dr. Billy Garvey.
Dr. Billy Garvey.
I did want to ask you about that day.
Yeah, that was really, really significant.
How? In what way?
Well, I just...
So hang on, just for the people who aren't aware, Dr. Billy Garvey, developmental pediatrician, flew up from Melbourne.
Yeah.
What,
It's a
2.5 year waiting list to see him.
Yeah.
He's also got quite a popular podcast, Pop Culture Parenting, I think.
He's extraordinary.
Yeah. And so he came up, you guys jumped in a car, visited a couple of high schools in Sydney.
Yeah,
Granville Boys High,
Yes.
Beverly Hills Girls High. Yep.
Both very different schools too.
Yep.
But we sat in front of the kids and they were early teens.
Yeah.
We spoke about social media, but we spoke about resilience. We spoke about bullying. Dr. Billy Garvey's style, of course, is to ask some very inviting questions, a lot of hands in the air.
Yeah.
How many people here think they have a best mate they could turn to if they felt like they were being bullied?
Yep.
So there was conversation like that as we stood there. And then that final question that we asked at both the schools, who would be okay if social media didn't exist? And all the hands went up. And for me, that was a huge moment. And I knew this. I think I knew this because a lot of the studies have been, if you ask a child individually, would they be okay if social media was gone? I knew the answer was yes, because they feel the pressure of it. But for all of them to then feel comfortable enough in that space with Dr. Billy Garvey, understanding probably where he was going, I thought that was a really significant moment. It helped reinforce the relief we would bring.
Yeah. Yeah, because social media in many ways for a young person represented the fear of missing out
Yeah.
and a moment by moment indication of whether or not I belonged in my peer group.
Yeah.
Which is a lot for a young person to have to navigate while they're going through puberty.
And that's just one side of it,
Yeah.
outside of all the addiction and the smart algorithms.
Okay.
Do you know the other part was when Charlotte passed away, there was a big moment where we had in the boardroom. I was like, oh, shivers. This is why we're doing it. It was kind of 3/4 into the campaign, you might say. And a lot of the messaging at the time, I remember thinking, I don't know if a change will happen. I don't know if anything will be done. And there was like, are we doing like Lisa's at home for me going, you have a second job. You're not here anymore. And we go, yeah, I know, honey, but this is for the kids. You know, it felt like we had enough momentum to say, this is worth doing. But, you know, everybody lives with doubt. You think, well, I've lost the plot. We're wasting time here. And then Charlotte passed away, and there was this moment of, well, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I think I've told you this story before. And it aligns in another tragic circumstance, but we had the guy who shot bin Laden on the show. I reckon it was the best 27 minutes of radio we've ever done.
Really?
Mm.
You haven't told me this story.
Haven't I?
No.
Anyway, this was
like
our...
a SEAL Team 6
Yeah.
kind of guy.
Yeah. And he spoke about all the detail to do with that night.
Yeah.
But he said before they went in, they were on a call to Obama, and he was wishing them the best of luck because he knew how risky the exercise was. And one of their commanders had said to the team going in, there's a fair chance we won't come out. And then one of them said, well, why are we going in? And there was silence. And then one of them said, we're going in for that woman, for the woman that jumped out of the tower and as her last act of decency, after dropping her kids at school, held her dress down as she jumped out of the building. That's why we're going in. And they all went, right, that's why we're going in. I mean, that's obviously on a world scale, but that was our Charlotte moment. That was our moment to go, are we having any impact here? Is anybody listening? We're on the right track. Charlotte passed away and we went, oh my God, this is why we're doing this. We're doing this to stop stories like that. A young 12-year-old girl skips off to bed after hugging mum and dad goodnight and doesn't wake up. my God,
Yeah.
that has to stop. We
Yeah.
have to do whatever we can to stop that
Yeah.
as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, a really significant moment in the campaign as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you reflect, because my next question was going to be like, what was the most challenging aspect of the campaign, or was there anything that sort of kept you up at night? But you sort of revealed there was sort of a moment in the middle or 3/4 of the way through where it started to take its toll. Because it took up a lot of headspace and time and energy, you know,
Yeah.
and we were playing offense like so much, like trying to outmaneuver people and things, and like it was very calculated at every turn.
Yeah, it
there was
was.
so many meetings, like what are we going to do? Like,
do we
so
do
we were
that?
so vigilant, and like to be sort of in that fight or flight state for such a prolonged period of time can get quite challenging.
Taxing.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't feel like the right word, but you're right. It's just challenging.
It's
but
emotionally taxing,
Yeah, it
you
is.
know? Yeah.
And you know what?
And you were at the front of it. Like you were at the coalface of it, really, in many ways.
From the media point of view, but from like the letter that Kelly wrote to the Prime Minister was like, I'll never ever read anything like that again. That was huge. And you know what's interesting? Behind the scenes, Sim, who works at Supermassive, who was doing the PR for us, she would call every now and then and go, just checking in.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. I just want to see how you are. Go, yeah, all right, Sam. I'm okay. And, you know, even Dad, who knows what I'm like,
Yeah.
he said, and how are you going with it all? So I could tell people, I wasn't sure whether people could tell that there was a bit going on, or people were just generally checking in because they knew what I'm like. Anyway, I reckon I'd been sort of fairly strong through a lot of it. 60 Minutes runs their special.
Oh, yeah.
I sit down, it starts, the show's just started. Nothing emotional had really happened. I'm crying on the couch.
Wow.
It was just this sort of moment of letting it go.
Wow.
Because I think I felt like we'd achieved something.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I hadn't had a moment to sort of stop. You know how busy it has been. You're working a day job. You're doing this as well. You're going home. You're being a parent. And you're just hoping that you get the outcome you want. You're swinging, Greg, aren't you?
At the start of our chat, you reflected on this thing around you being like really passionate about people. And I want to maybe just ask some questions that are a little more focused on you for a second, because I want to know more about you and how that has shaped
Too personal.
the way that you show up in the world today. So can you cast your mind back to 13-year-old
You
Mike?
can hold it if you want.
Yeah. Can you cast your mind back to 13-year-old Michael? Where'd you grow up? How was your high school experience? What were the highs, lows, everything in between?
Melbourne town to city south of here, about 900 k's.
Yeah.
Yeah, had fun at school.
Okay.
Not an academic.
Scotch
College.
I always struggle to say it. I'm so sorry.
Scotch College.
I think in Sydney
You think
there's-
I say it with an
No,
accent?
in Sydney
Not
there's
an
Scotch.
accent.
In Sydney
Scots
there's-
College,
I know,
yeah.
I know, but,
And this is Scotch College. Yeah. It's not funny, mate. You asked me a question, I'll give you the answer, and now you're laughing at me. Scotch College, yeah? I think I might know, mate.
I know.
Okay.
Great. So
Yeah,
you
so
went to Scotch
you were
College.
asking how many kids in year 10 played first footy.
Oh,
Is that
was
what you're
you.
asking?
Okay.
What?
Really?
No, look, I had a bit of
AFL.
AFL, yeah. I
Yeah.
had a bit of a kick around the paddock, Greg.
Okay.
Probably one of the great sportsmen to go through the school, but that's complete.
Separate.
Well, house captain, I won a riding award as well, but that's separate to, I think, the questions you're asking.
Okay.
Not very academic. Love my sport. Love the social life of school.
Yep.
That was fun.
Yep.
That was great fun.
Okay.
Yeah, always sensitive. I was a sensitive heart.
Well,
Yeah. An overthinker. I'm a bit hardened these days, I think. But yeah, I mean, if I look back on relationships and moments of emotion, I was probably too heavily invested. I needed a bit more of shut up and get on with it.
Okay.
I've got a lot of that now. Shut up and get on with it.
Okay.
That's really just attempting to block out voices in your head, isn't it?
Okay.
Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling ill-equipped to answer that question.
Okay. You'll take that on notice, will you?
I'll just
Did you get back to me on the next
I'll
series of the podcast?
Yeah. 3 words that are important to 36 months are self-esteem, resilience, and belonging. Just looking at your kind of growing up experience through the triangle lens of those 3 words, where and how did you kind of find or develop your sense of self-esteem? Where and how did you find belonging?
I think self-esteem was there. Yeah, self-esteem was there. I mean, as you develop into as a kid, I grew very early. So self-esteem was rocked because you're trying to work out how you fit in, how you belong. Sport was a big one for me, team sport. Like I just loved that.
Yeah.
So I felt the belonging there, but you also, I think everybody grows up feeling different. It's a very natural thing to think you're the only one going through this in the world at that time. That's a very natural thing to explore, to question where you fit in. Everybody does that. I probably wish I'd been told that when I was younger. Maybe I did. Maybe I was told that. I think everybody goes through that. And then you go through a time of working out where you fit socially, trying to understand the impact you have on people, trying to work out which group you fit into at school, all of that. That's a very natural thing to happen. But at the time, I'm not sure I really discussed thinking that was meant to happen. That is meant to happen. That's how society builds. But there were times that it was too much. I found it too much, moments of depression. But, I mean, I think if you were to describe me, if my mates were to describe me, I think they would say fun-loving bloke that probably got a bit heavy at times, a bit deep at times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting that you talk about sport. I've asked this question to sort of all of our guests, and sport comes up a lot as a place where they started to develop their self-esteem, and then that becomes a pathway to a tribe to belong to, like friends outside of their school friends, Can you talk a little more on 36 months? We always spoke about it. It wasn't just kicking the can down the road, changing the law, raising the age. It also represented a window of opportunity.
Yeah.
So we are removing the influence of social media from that developmental window of 13 to 16-year-olds. But we also want to think about what can we do to show up in that period of time in a meaningful and positive way. There's a lot of benefits that participation in grassroots community sport can kind of play during that time, gets kids. I mean, even the PM said it, we want to get kids off their devices and onto the footy fields and the netball court. So there is this sense, gets kids outside, moving their body, building peer groups or relationships with other groups of friends outside of their school friends. Lots of kind of benefits. Have you got any more thoughts on the role that grassroots community sport could kind of potentially play in some of the more positive things that we're trying to achieve?
I talk to parents who have non-negotiables for their kids.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have a team sport.
Yep.
Whether that's footy, basketball, netball, whatever it might be, whether it's school or whether it's just social, whether it's, community in a local club. It's such an important thing. You learn so much intimately too, with all the players and the support that you have and how those relationships develop.
Yeah.
And the feeling of success, the feeling of having to fight back, all those things. I was torn the other day. I saw this thing on that topic of having to fight back. It was around giving your kids too much. And I think all parents are very good at that. I'm one of them. I want to solve all the problems. I want to give them every opportunity. You do that. But if you do that, the topic was around stealing their chance to build self-esteem. Because if they're never lowered, and I hate to say it, that you deliberately you deliberately do want them to have challenges.
Yeah.
I was saying to Lisa the other night, little man Ted was going for house captain. So he had to make a speech to present his pitch for why he should be house captain. And I said, for one, that's awesome. He's up in front of his class. He's worked on his speech and he's presented it. He's had the bravery and the confidence to get up in front of his year group and say, I'm Ted Wipfli and here's why I think I should be house captain. And Lisa said, oh God, I hope he gets it. He's worked so hard on his speech. And I was so torn going, I also hope he doesn't. So I can say to him, but you can. It might not be now, but I tell you what, the year after that you might be. So let's have a look at what we did this year, what might work for next year. I felt bad saying it, but I was like, it's fantastic if he does.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic if he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't turn up on a silver platter. It's just not like that. And there's going to be times where your head's in the pillow and there's tears running out of your eyes and you got to get up and go to school.
Yeah.
And I think, we have to be very careful of that with our kids today.
Yeah.
We used to have a fantastic CEO at Nova. She had a couple of girls, Kath O'Connor, and she said, do you know what I've learned? The power of parenting with teenage girls, she said, is not to have the answers, just to listen. You just have to listen and then let them sort it out. And I get that. You can't answer all their questions, even if you know the answer. Well, you're going to stop a train wreck if you see it coming, or suggest how they can make their way forward. But that's tactically quite hard to do as a parent. And it requires energy.
Yeah.
Because while the kid's crying, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'm trying to get in front of the TV and have a glass of wine, or I need to do some work. So if you just dry your eyes and harden up, princess, I can get on with my day. But you have to have those conversations too.
Yeah, we this came up in another conversation, like a podcast episode.
Oh, it won't be better than what I just said.
No, this is no.
Good.
But I want to mention it again because we were talking to a psychologist that's connected to 36 months, and I actually asked, what are some of the drivers of self-esteem? And her answer surprised me. She said, doing hard things. And I was like, oh. And she's like, yeah, we build self-esteem when we learn we are capable of doing hard things, overcoming hard things.
That's the answer. That's the input.
Yeah. And so, that's what sort of you reflected on with some of your things around sport. Sport is the vehicle through which young people are faced with challenges alongside their friends that they need to sort of overcome. And it's hard and it's difficult. It's not always easy. And you fail, then you got to kind of bounce back. And that is...
I love the idea that every no puts you closer to a yes. But to me, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm getting back to people. I'm so motivated by someone that says it's impossible. Like, that is such a great driver, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can't do that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to change what you celebrate. So with failure or not succeeding, it's really easy to focus on the outcome. Like I have not gotten the outcome I wanted. One of the tools is to celebrate the effort.
Yeah.
So admire and celebrate the effort rather than sort of focus on the outcome, because not many people have a swing at the fence or dust themselves off and try again. Like it's hard, I think that's, as a parent with my own kids, I try and not use a lot of outcome focused language. I try and use a lot of effort focused language, and just sort of reinforce and celebrate the effort they put into things.
Yep.
Because I think that helps them build resilience.
They still love you, do they?
I think so.
Yeah, great news.
Yeah.
Touch and go for a while.
We know that healthy connection helps build self-esteem. resilience and belonging. We know that connection doesn't happen without intention. Having sort of intentional breaks without distractions helps us uncover the best version of ourselves. 36 Months has been supported by some different brands. Premium partner KitKat stands for this idea of quality breaks or better breaks, which are purposeful pauses or moments to switch off without life's distractions in all their forms.
Love that.
A purposeful break can maintain a positive mindset, clarity of thinking and focus, and bring us back to feeling more refreshed, present, and connected to others. So my question is, in a world that has never been more digitally connected, what are some of the ways that you personally like to take a quality break, disconnect in order to reconnect?
I think it's something the boys have got from school, and I take it a bit further. But if it feels like it's been screen time, sitting in front of the TV or whatever it is, we always say, all right, let's touch the grass. Time to touch some grass.
That's cool. That's the phrase you use, which means what? Get outside.
I think I've got that right. Is it touch grass? Let's touch grass. Yeah, that's right. So we take our shoes off and go to the backyard. So my version of that, because we're lucky enough to live in Sydney, is touch grass to me means outdoors.
Okay.
So the recent version of that, and the kids love it, is jumping in the water down at Bondi.
Oh, great.
It's jumping into the surf. And once again, that's such a big confidence builder. Francesca's 4. She's now diving into the waves. Dad, did you see that?
Wow.
Oh, we got washed up. Hold my hand over it and jump over these waves while they're breaking. To me, that is heaven.
Yeah.
Like, so we touch grass by touching sand and water.
Yeah.
But getting back to that and the refreshing dive in the ocean.
I love that.
Makes it sound like I'm hungover, but I'm not. I just need that refresh every now and then just to run the salt through your hair.
Yeah.
I've good hair at the moment.
You do?
Yours is...
I don't have good hair.
Doesn't matter, Greg.
That's all right.
That's not on the list of it.
No,
Should have
not.
left that out. But yeah, that's important, I think.
Touch grass.
Touch grass, Sonny. Love it, buddy.
Every week we have listeners that submit questions.
Yeah.
And of all the sort of the DMs that we get, the most common thing that people say, you ready for it? Is thank you.
Do they?
And so I want to pass that on from the 127,000 people that have signed the petition, from all the people that are connected to us on our different social channels. Thanks to you and to Rob,
You.
to the team for stepping up to the plate and advocating for the change that we've seen happen. So thank you. Because
Thank you. Okay.
yeah, no,
And I
but
think...
I just want everything.
But what we have also said, and I think it's important to recognise, that we're not the only ones having this conversation. And 36 Months represented other groups out there
Yep.
that didn't have the platform that we had.
Yep.
So we had a bit of flex, and we were able to maximise that.
Yep.
So I think that's important to recognise too. But yeah, we played our part.
Yep.
So we'll take the thank you for our part.
Yep. And it came at a cost.
Yeah.
And but I just wanted you to know that it is literally the most important sort of message that comes through is just thank you.
You know, I was it's going to sound like I was making myself out to be a superhero. I was buying flowers for my wife yesterday, Greg.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, I'm there. I mean, let's not go into the fact that they're on sale because they're going to die in a couple of days.
Yeah.
But she's going away,
Did you
so I
have some
thought,
Coles?
no, I got them from... But anyway, I knew she was going away. They only need to last a few days. Getting on sale, $28. But a guy came up to me and he said, I just want to say thanks.
Oh, wow.
So I've had a few of those moments.
That's great.
And that moves me more than anything.
Okay.
He said, I've got an 11-year-old. Always, after thank you, always comes, I've got an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
So you know how personal it is.
Yeah.
So even prior to the law changing, I was lucky enough to have people contact me saying, you've already changed the conversation in our house. And that was a big part of it. Once again, getting back to not being able to change the tech, we wanted to be able to change the law and, as importantly, change the behaviour.
Yeah.
So that conversation can change the behaviour.
Yeah.
That means the world to me.
Yeah.
To know that someone's comfortable enough to come up and say, hey, recognised it, appreciate it.
I love that.
That's great.
The last thing that we're going to do is this turned out to be a great way to close an episode. I've noticed about it because
I've never kissed a man. That's what we're not doing.
I never know where it's gonna
Greg
go.
used to be a model. You know
Um,
that. He used to model.
We're going to play a very short, sort of 20, 30-second game of,
Do you want big boy pants or
of
can I
word
muck around?
association tennis.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to say a random word and you're going to respond with whatever word pops into your head first. And then I'll hit one back with whatever pops into my head first. And we're going to see if we can avoid the gutter for 30 seconds.
So we keep hitting it back?
Yeah. So I'm going to say a word, you say a word. But I'm not going to say too much, but we're going to give this a go. All right.
No, I'm not a gutter guy.
Scotch college,
School.
friends,
Sport.
resilience,
Study.
growth,
Friends.
journey.
I think I said friends twice.
You did. You know, you're thinking too much.
So have I lost?
No, journey, go.
Mateship.
Change.
Camaraderie.
That's a nice place to land.
Did I win?
It's not a competition.
What do I win?
It's not a competition. It's what often happens is because we're just saying random words that pop into our head, right? It sort of ends up kind of summarizing in the chat that we've just had, like in a way, you know? And actually love that final word that you said, camaraderie. I mean, we didn't really know each other before this whole journey. I mean, and the whole team, like I feel like this journey that we've all been on together has created a real sort of tight-knit group where there's been a lot of camaraderie, you know?
Because what I love about it too is the misfits that have found their way to the boardroom. Hasn't it been a case of people that we've sort of known within the game who have said, love what you're doing, how can I help?
I'm in, yeah.
Great, you're in.
Yeah.
Grab a seat.
It's good. You can take a sort of a significant, meaningful and serious swing at the fence and still have fun along the way.
I don't know what you've got against the fence. You've swung it 3 times in this podcast. What, if you're done with the fence there, mate, just take it down.
All right, let's call it there. That's good.
Love you, Greg.
That's right.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Thanks,
Awesome.
Tahina.
You guys want to make out?
No.
No, that was going to be mince.